In the heart of Seoul, at the high-end restaurant La Ciel, with a panoramic view of the Gangnam skyline, the air was filled with the scent of Million One wine, the soft melody of classical music, and the leisurely conversations of the successful. Sitting alone at a table by the window, Lee Ha-eun seemed like an alien presence. Taejun paused for a moment, and then he made an announcement that shocked everyone in the room. She had spent a good 30 minutes in front of her closet that morning. Faced with the heavy word, blind date, she had chosen the most modest and expensive-looking items she owned, an ivory blouse and navy slacks. But amidst La Ciel's splendid chandeliers, gold decorations, and velvet-covered chairs, her efforts seemed shabby. She felt like a simple pebble placed among polished jewels. As of today, I'm officially appointing Ms. Lee Ha-eun as a special advisor for the Landscape Architecture Division of the Green City Project. Ha-eun fidgeted nervously, staring only at the water glass on the table. Her slender fingers traced the condensation on the glass's surface meaninglessly. Her heart pounded against her ribs. This kind of place was as uncomfortable as ill-fitting clothes. The place she belonged was a garden full of the smell of earth and grass, or in front of a drafting board covered with complex blueprints. But reality had pushed her here, into the suffocating center stage of the upper class. What, Ms. Lee Ha-eun? Are you referring to the CEO's wife? It was because of her mother's desperate plea. Her father's once solid business had failed, and the family was drowning in debt. Ha-eun, a talented landscape architect, had to take responsibility for her family's livelihood before she could even pursue her own dreams. Her salary was not enough to cover the mounting interest. That was when her mother, in tears, had presented her with this blind date. The man was Park Jin-woo, the only son of the leading construction company, Jinmyung Construction. Her mother said this marriage was the only lifeline that could save their family. The room began to stir. Expressions of disbelief and blatant dissatisfaction were mixed. An old director who had dedicated his life to the Yoonsung Group couldn't contain his anger and stood up. Just this once. It's your mother's wish. Mr. CEO, this is ridiculous. Is this company a joke to place your unverified wife in charge of a project that the group's fate depends on? This is blatant nepotism and an abuse of power. That voice echoed in her ears. Ha-eun squeezed her eyes shut. A loveless marriage. A meeting based only on conditions? It was disgusting, but she couldn't turn her back on her family, who were standing on the edge of a cliff. So, here she was, sitting like a sinner. That's right. What will the public think? You shouldn't make crucial company decisions based on your personal feelings. The appointment time of 7:00 p.m. had long passed. As the clock hands moved towards 7:30, Ha-eun's lips grew dry. The futile hope that he might not come and the self-pity of being humiliated in this place washed over her simultaneously. She reached for the water glass to wet her dry throat. At that very moment, her tense fingers slipped and knocked over the glass. Voices of opposition rained down. In their eyes, Lee Ha-eun was just a lucky Cinderella, a woman with no ability. Clang. Taejun listened to all the opposition in silence. His gaze was unwavering. When the room finally quieted down a bit, he spoke. His voice was quiet, but the weight it carried overwhelmed all the noise. It wasn't a sharp noise, but in the quiet restaurant, it was loud enough. The transparent glass fell onto the table, spilling clear water onto the white tablecloth. Ha-eun's ivory blouse sleeve and slacks were hopelessly soaked. Did you say abuse of power? Oh. His gaze swept over the directors who had opposed him. Ha-eun's face turned beet red. She could feel the stinging gazes of those around her. She hurriedly tried to wipe up the spilled water with a napkin, but the wet tablecloth only became more unsightly. Her clumsy movements amplified her embarrassment. The final person in charge of this company is me, Kang Tae-jun. My decision is the Yoonsung Group's decision, and I will also take responsibility for the results of my decision. A man at the next table was watching the scene indifferently. He stood up. Kang Tae-jun, the young head of the Yoonsung Group, standing at the pinnacle of South Korea's construction industry. The air around him always seemed a few degrees colder. His sharp jawline, cool eyes, and immaculate black suit seemed to have erased the word emotion from him. He was listening to a dull report from a subordinate, but his attention was entirely on the commotion at the next table. I am not appointing Ms. Lee Ha-eun because she is my wife. I made this decision because I saw her talent, which is superior to anyone else's here. While you were fighting rumors, she came up with the answer to turn this crisis into an opportunity. From the moment she entered the restaurant, Taejun had noticed her. A simplicity that didn't fit the atmosphere, and a deep anxiety hidden within. She was like a small, lost animal. The women in Taejun's world were armed with a perfectly calculated beauty from head to toe. But this woman was different. She had tried to dress up but was clumsy somewhere, and that clumsiness felt human. Taejun nodded to Secretary Kim. Secretary Kim distributed materials based on Ha-eun's sketches to all the directors. The directors looked at the materials with skepticism, and then their expressions slowly began to change. Surprise, admiration, and an unbelievable sense of awe. Spilling water and fumbling around was a disaster. Taejun's brow furrowed slightly. Normally, he wouldn't have even glanced at such an unsightly scene. But strangely, he couldn't look away. It wasn't contempt or ridicule. It was just interesting. In the trembling of her small shoulders as she desperately tried to manage the situation, he found a strange kind of sincerity. This is the vision that Ms. Lee Ha-eun has presented. I will bet Yoon-sung's future on this vision. If anyone disagrees with this decision, please submit your resignation right now. I won't stop you. It was then that arrogant footsteps were heard from the restaurant entrance. A man in a well-pressed luxury suit and a shiny watch headed straight for Ha-eun's table. It was Park Jin-woo. Despite being 30 minutes late, he didn't offer a single word of apology. Instead, he scanned the wet table and Ha-eun's appearance up and down with a blatant frown. No one could oppose him any longer. In the face of Taejun's charisma and the overwhelming vision he presented, all opposition lost its power. Miss Lee Ha-hyun. That evening, Ha-eun heard the news at the penthouse. Taejun informed her indifferently after work, as if he were talking about the weather. His voice dripped with contempt. Ha-eun stood up, trying to hide her wet clothes. You'll start working at the company tomorrow, as a special advisor for the Green City project. Yes, hello, you must be Mr. Park Jin-woo. What are you talking about? What's with this mess? Are you greeting me by spilling water as soon as I arrive? What unique manners? Ha-eun was so surprised she couldn't believe her ears. It was a cold sneer. The color drained from Ha-eun's face. Secretary Kim will fill you in on the details. Prove your talent. Prove that I wasn't wrong. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. He left it at that and went into his study. Left alone, Ha-eun stood there blankly for a while. The sudden appointment, the opposition from the directors, she could picture it all. Fear crept in, but at the same time, she felt something hot welling up in a corner of her heart, her dream, which she had to bury because of debt. The opportunity to showcase her talent. A man named Kang Tae-jun had put all of it on the table for her. Forget it, have a seat. She was no longer just a contract wife in hiding. She was a player thrown into the middle of a huge battlefield. She now had to stand side by side with Kang Tae-jun and fight together. Their relationship was no longer just that of housemates or contract partners. They were becoming comrades in arms, sharing a common destiny. Jin-woo threw himself into the chair arrogantly. He looked Ha-eun over as if appraising an object. His gaze started at the tips of her worn-out shoes, moved to her wet slacks and blouse, and stopped at her tense face. Green City Project TF Team. The ID card with Ha-eun's name on it felt unfamiliar and heavy. When she first stepped into the project team office on the 30th floor of the Eunsun Group headquarters, Ha-eun felt all the team members' eyes on her. Their gazes held curiosity, disbelief, and even a hint of hostility. The CEO's parachute. It felt like an invisible label was attached to her back. You look nothing like your picture. My mother was praising you to the skies, saying you were a quiet and gentle lady. The team leader, Manager O, was polite on the surface, but he didn't assign her any important tasks. He just threw project-related materials at her, saying, "Just review these." The other team members treated her like she was invisible, openly ignoring her. Ha-eun felt humiliated, but she didn't show it. She knew the weight of the opportunity Kang Tae-jun had given her. She had no choice but to prove herself with her skills. Not words. Every word he spoke was a sharp blade cutting into Ha-eun's pride. She silently delved into the mountain of materials. Geological data of the project site, climate change statistics over decades, the development history of the surrounding area, and records of all past public works projects. Even after returning home, she analyzed the data late into the night. Her passion was more than just a sense of professional duty. It was the desperate struggle of someone who had been given a chance to showcase her talent. I heard your family's having a hard time. That's probably why you're here. But listen, Ms. Lee Ha-eun, no matter how desperate you are, isn't this a bit much? Taejun watched her silently. Every night when he came out of his study, he would see her small back, hunched over the living room table, wrestling with the materials. He knew from Secretary Kim's reports how she was being treated by the team. He wanted to run over and grab the collars of those who ignored her, but he held back. This was a wall that Ha-eun had to overcome on her own. All he could do was provide her with all the support she needed. Excuse me. Then one day, Ha-eun discovered something strange. It was while she was reviewing the records of the Pure Unsol Citizens Park and Community Center, which had been completed a few years ago near the Green City project site. The construction company was none other than Jin Myung Construction, Park Jin-woo's family company. She noticed a subtle difference between the list of high-quality materials recorded in the construction cost statement and the texture of the materials in the photos taken at the actual site. To her expert eye, the difference was clear. Can't you grasp the situation? Do you think you belong in this restaurant? Your clothes, your behavior, everything is substandard. Do you think I came all this way during my busy schedule to sit with a woman like you? This is strange. These are clearly different materials. The murmuring around them grew louder. Some people were openly staring and whispering. Ha-eun trembled with a sense of humiliation, as if all the blood in her body was draining to her feet. Her nails dug into her palms. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she bit her lip and desperately held them back. If she cried here, she would truly become the pathetic woman he described. Intuitively sensing that something was wrong, Ha-eun began to dig deeper. She asked Taejun to obtain the original safety inspection reports and material delivery records from that time. On paper, everything was perfect. But she didn't give up. She tracked down small companies that had worked as subcontractors for Jin Myung Construction in the past and managed to find a retired site manager. At the next table, Kang Taejun dismissed his subordinate with a gesture. His face was still expressionless, but a cold flame flickered in his jet-black eyes. He knew Park Jin-woo, the hooligan son of Jin Myung Construction, arrogant, incompetent, and a piece of trash who enjoyed trampling on the weak using his position. Taejun despised such people. At first, the old man was reluctant to speak, but moved by Ha-eun's sincere eyes and her persistent persuasion to reveal the truth, he finally opened his heavy mouth. His gaze returned to Ha-eun. She looked fragile, as if she could break at any moment, but she didn't cry. Although her head was bowed, her tightly pressed lips and the slight trembling of her shoulders showed a desperate will not to be broken, a desperate struggle to protect the last shred of dignity amidst the humiliation. Back then, there were a lot of strange things. Instead of the A-grade rebar listed in the documents, Chinese B-grade rebar was brought to the site. The ready-mix concrete ratio was also below standard. We had no choice but to do as we were told from above. Anyone who complained lost their job that day. At that moment, Taejun felt something hard inside his chest crack slightly. In his life, which had always been filled with people full of pretense and hypocrisy, such transparent and desperate sincerity was a first. He became curious about this woman. What was inside that small body that allowed her to endure such insults? The old man's testimony was shocking. This wasn't just corruption. It was a clear criminal act, like planting a time bomb that could collapse at any moment in a public building used by countless citizens. Park Jin-woo's verbal abuse continued. Ha-eun felt a chill run down her spine. She stayed up all night organizing all the materials and testimony into a report. If this became public, Jin Myung Construction would be finished. Look, Miss Lee Ha-eun, I hate wasting my time. Let's just forget today ever happened. I have no time or money to waste on a woman like you. Oh, and tell your mother not to set me up with someone like this again. But her movements had also reached Park Jin-woo's ears. The spies he had planted reported that Kang Tae-jun's wife was digging into Jin Myung Construction's past projects. At first, Park Jin-woo scoffed. He stood up. As if he had seen something dirty, he dusted off his hands, shot Ha-eun one last glare, and turned away. What does that stupid girl know? Silence fell in the restaurant. All eyes were on the abandoned Ha-eun. She remained motionless, her head still bowed. It was as if time had stopped. A waiter cautiously approached and asked if she was okay, but she couldn't answer. But when he received the report that Ha-eun had even met the retired site manager, his face turned pale. He realized that Ha-eun was not the naive woman he thought she was. She was a sharp dagger aimed at his throat. After a long moment, she slowly raised her head. There were no tears. Her empty eyes wandered, out of focus. With a trembling hand, she picked up the old bag she had placed next to her chair, and as if nothing had happened, she staggered out of the restaurant. From that day on, Park Jin-woo's methods went from despicable to vicious. Watching her leave, Kang Tae-jun's eyes narrowed. A faint, unpredictable smile touched his lips. He got up from his seat and followed her without hesitation. It was late one night when Ha-eun was leaving work after working overtime. As she was walking down a deserted alley, a motorcycle suddenly came roaring towards her from behind. Ha-eun didn't even have time to scream. She instinctively threw herself to the side to barely avoid it. The motorcycle brushed past her bag and disappeared into the darkness without stopping. Ha-eun, who had fallen to the ground, clutched her pounding chest. The movement was too intentional to be a simple accident. He had found an interesting pebble. He had no intention of just passing it by. The next day, as she was passing a construction site near the company, a pile of steel pipes suddenly fell from above, landing right next to where she'd been standing. A loud crash echoed, and dust billowed up. If she'd been a few seconds later, it was terrifying just to imagine. The cold night air seeped deep into her lungs. It was a sharp, honest air, completely different from the warm, hypocritical atmosphere of the restaurant. Ha-eun felt like she could finally breathe. She walked aimlessly into a dark alley behind the building, where the glamorous lights of Gangnam couldn't reach. She could no longer bear the stares of people. After 2 consecutive accidents, Ha-eun intuitively knew that this was no coincidence. Someone was threatening her. Park Jin-woo's face came to her mind. Leaning her back against the cold brick wall, she slowly sank to the ground. In that instant, the last dam she had been desperately holding back broke. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks. She couldn't even cry out loud. She just sobbed, her shoulders shaking, clutching her breaking heart and swallowing her pain. Humiliation, shame, resentment towards her family, and self-loathing all mixed together, threatening to suffocate her. That evening, when she returned to the penthouse, Ha-eun tried to act as nonchalant as usual, but she couldn't hide her trembling hands. Tae-jun had already received a full report from Secretary Kim. He just watched Ha-eun in silence throughout dinner. His face was colder than usual, but a dark anger was simmering in his deep eyes. It was then that a low, calm voice came from the darkness. After dinner, as Ha-eun was about to go to her room, Tae-jun stopped her. "If you cry in a place like this, you're bound to become a good spectacle." "Wait a minute." Startled, Ha-eun looked up. In her eyes, now accustomed to the dark, a man's silhouette appeared. He had a much more imposing presence than he had under the restaurant's bright lights. Dressed in a flawless suit, even his shadow seemed perfectly tailored. It was Kang Tae-jun. His voice was low and dangerous. He approached Ha-eun and grabbed her by the shoulders. His grip was so strong that Ha-eun winced involuntarily. Hae-yeon instinctively flinched. Could this man have come to mock her too? She quickly wiped her tears with the back of her hand and looked up at him with wary eyes. "Did something happen today? Who are you? Do you know me?" "Nothing happened." Instead of answering, Tae-jun took a step closer to her. His shadow completely engulfed Ha-eun's small frame. He took a handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. Ha-eun hesitated. She couldn't figure out his intentions. Ha-eun lied. She didn't want to worry him. This was a fight she had started, and she thought she had to solve it herself. "Take it. You're a mess." But Tae-jun would not tolerate her lie. "Why, did you follow me?" "Look me in the eye and say that again. I have business with you." His cold gaze seemed to pierce through Ha-eun's heart. Ha-eun couldn't hold out any longer and lowered her head. At that moment, Tae-jun's cold anger exploded. Tae-jun answered curtly and got straight to the point. That was always his way. No unnecessary emotional exchanges or preambles. "Park Jin-woo, that son of a bitch. Let's get married, Miss Lee Ha-eun." He spat out the curse under his breath. His face was white with rage. It wasn't business-related anger. It was an uncontrollable, murderous rage against someone who had touched something precious to him. "What?" He released his grip on Ha-eun's shoulders and instead gently cupped her face. His gaze was no longer cold. It held a deep anxiety and desperate worry that Ha-eun had never seen before. Ha-eun couldn't believe her ears. Just moments after being humiliated and kicked out of the worst blind date of her life, a complete stranger was asking her to marry him. The situation was so absurd that her tears stopped. She was convinced he was mocking her. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? Are you having fun as making people miserable your hobby? You're just like that man from before. His voice was trembling slightly. Her voice trembled with sharpness. But Taejun's expression remained unchanged. If you get even a scratch on you, I don't know what I'll do to him. Do you understand? Don't put me in the same category as trash like Park Jin-woo. It's disgusting! His voice dropped a tone. And I'm not the kind of person who has time for jokes. A relationship bound by contract. Business partners. All those boundaries were collapsing at this moment. His gaze and voice were clearly saying that this was no longer a contract. His worry was genuine, and his anger was for her. His eyes were serious. There was no hint of playfulness or mockery, only a cold, rational gaze. Ha-eun was confused. Ha-eun looked at his trembling eyes and couldn't say a word. All she could do was be aware of her own heart beating wildly. But why? With someone like me. That night, Kang Tae-jun didn't sleep a wink in his study. Worry for Ha-eun and a murderous rage towards Park Jin-woo threatened to paralyze his reason. He wanted to go find Park Jin-woo right then and break his neck, but he couldn't. That kind of revenge was too easy, too simple. He felt he wouldn't be satisfied until he had destroyed everything Park Jin-woo held most dear. All at once his arrogant pride and Jin-myung Construction, the company his father had spent a lifetime building. To do that, he needed a more meticulous and cruel plan. There must be a reason. Taejun leaned against the wall. I need a marriage. And you seem to need money. I'm proposing a deal to satisfy each other's needs. And at the center of that plan was Lee Ha-eun. He had to keep her safe while luring Park Jin-woo into a perfect trap. Taejun spent the night drawing and erasing dozens of scenarios. Finally, as dawn broke, he chose the most dangerous, but also the most certain, method, a deal. The word stabbed Ha-eun's heart like a dagger. In the end, it was about money again. From the next morning, the atmosphere in the penthouse completely changed. Taejun didn't give Ha-eun a single glance. He ignored her completely, as if she were invisible. He left for work without even having breakfast with her. Ha-eun was so bewildered, wondering if the intense moment from last night had been a dream. But she tried to understand that he must be deep in thought about something. I looked into you. Your father's business went bankrupt. Debts in the billions. A talented landscape architect held back by reality. Am I right? But his cold treatment continued at the company. In fact, it got worse. Ha-eun's face turned pale. How much did this man know? It was during a project team meeting. As Ha-eun cautiously began to report on the evidence of Jin-myung Construction's shoddy work, Taejun coldly cut her off. Don't be scared. That kind of information can be found in an hour if one is determined. My proposal is simple. Enter into a contract marriage with me. The term is 1 year. During that time, you will perfectly perform the role of my wife, publicly, and in front of my family. If you have time to report on unconfirmed rumors like that, you should be properly completing the landscape design I assigned you. Can't you see what a crisis this project is in? A contract? Marriage? Everyone in the meeting room held their breath. This was the same man who, just a few days ago, had entrusted her with full authority, saying he believed in her talent. Yet, during the contract period, I will take care of all your family's debts. You won't have to give up your dream because of debt. And when the contract ends, I'll give you enough alimony to buy a small building in Seoul. You just have to divorce me cleanly. Ha-eun stared at him, her face pale. Ha-eun couldn't breathe. The words this man was saying sounded like lines from an unrealistic drama. Settle billions in debt and give her enough alimony to buy a building. But, Mr. CEO, this isn't just a rumor. And Eng? Why me? A man like you must have women lining up to marry you. Enough! Taejun slammed his hand on the table and shouted, Ever since you joined this project, there's been nothing but trouble. Was it my mistake to entrust such an important task to an amateur like you? I can no longer tolerate this incompetence just because you're my wife. As of today, you are to cease all external investigations. Focus on the design plan. Those women lining up are precisely the reason I don't want to get married. A cynical smile touched Taejun's lips. They don't want to marry Kang Taejun, the person, but the title of heir to the Yunsung Group. Their minds are filled with calculations. It's tiring and disgusting. It was a humiliating remark. All the team members in the room looked at Ha-eun with a mixture of surprise and schadenfreude. Their eyes seemed to say, The parachute is finally being abandoned by the CEO. Ha-eun felt as if all the blood was draining from her body. She didn't know what to say. All she could do was meet his cold, piercing gaze. It was so unfamiliar and cold that it froze her heart. His gaze turned to Ha-eun. From that day on, Taejun's act became more blatant. He would pass Ha-eun in the company as if she were a stranger, and he would throw the reports she submitted into the trash without even looking at them. He even deliberately leaked photos of himself looking affectionate with the daughter of another company's chairman to the press. Sensational headlines like Kang Tae-jun and wife, rumors of discord, a new scandal brewing, flooded the internet. But you seem different. In that situation earlier, you endured it to the end instead of crying or screaming. You were trampled, but not broken. I like that. You seem uncomplicated. I don't need any more complicated variables in my life. Ha-eun had to endure a hellish time. At work, she had to bear the ridicule and pitying glances of her colleagues. And at home, she had to face an icy silence. Every night, she wanted to ask him, "Why are you doing this? What did I do wrong?" But he didn't even give her a chance to talk. He started sleeping in a separate room, and if she tried to approach him, he would avoid her as if she were a nuisance. That was the reason. Because she had nothing. Because her background was humble. She was chosen because she posed no threat to him. It was another form of humiliation. But strangely, Ha-eun wasn't angry. The absurd situation just felt distant. Her heart was torn to shreds. Was it all a lie? Those moments when he said he would protect her, that she was his diamond, was the worry and anger he had shown her just a momentary whim? Did he give her the project just to prove her incompetence, and then cast her aside? All sorts of doubts and despair overwhelmed her. The price for opening her heart and starting to rely on him, without even realizing it, was too cruel. What do I have to do? But Ha-eun didn't break. She became defiant. If he accused her of being incompetent, she was determined to prove him wrong with her skills. She stayed up all night, perfecting the landscape design for Green City. Her sorrow and pain were sublimated into brilliant creativity on the blueprint. Her voice was barely a whisper, but Tae-jun heard it clearly. It was a sign that she hadn't rejected his offer. Meanwhile, Kang Tae-jun's insides were burning as he watched all of this. Nothing difficult. You'll receive all the necessary training to be the mistress of the Yoonsung Group. Etiquette, culture, fashion. I'll change you from head to toe. You just need to smile elegantly by my side when I want you to. Can you do that? Every night, he would stand in front of her door for a long time after making sure she was asleep. Whenever he heard the faint sound of her sobbing through the crack in the door, his heart felt like it was being torn apart by a knife. He was disgusted with himself for hurting her, but he couldn't stop. This was the only way to protect her. Ha-eun couldn't answer. Her mind felt like it was going to explode. On one hand, her pride was screaming, "Are you crazy? This is selling yourself." But on the other hand, reality whispered, "If you miss this chance, your family will be out on the street. Your dream will be buried forever." He had Secretary Kim monitor Ha-eun 24/7. The best security guards from the Eunsun Group followed her every move like shadows, and based on the evidence Ha-eun had found, he was secretly investigating Jin Myung Construction's slush fund flow and their lobbying of government officials. He was weaving a net to ensnare everything Park Jin-woo had, taking advantage of his lowered guard. Her mother's tearful face came to mind. The image of her father, aging day by day under the harassment of debt collectors, appeared, and the terrible humiliation she had suffered at the hands of Park Jin-woo. As expected, Park Jin-woo fell perfectly into the trap. She lifted her head, and for the first time, she looked Kang Tae-jun straight in the eye. He was a dangerous man. His eyes were deep and cold, as if they could see through everything. A year with him might be like hell. The rumors of discord between Kang Tae-jun and Lee Ha-eun were like a victory toast to him. He received reports from his informants that their relationship was on the verge of collapse. He burst into a maniacal laugh at the news that Kang Tae-jun had publicly humiliated Lee Ha-eun and even started a scandal with another woman. But could there be a worse hell than her current reality? See, what did I tell you? Even that bastard Kang Tae-jun finally realized what a useless bitch that girl is. Ha-eun clutched the damp handkerchief tightly. He was now convinced that Lee Ha-eun was completely out of Kang Tae-jun's protection. She was now a worthless, troublesome existence, the only witness who knew about his corruption, a target to be eliminated. "I want to see the contract," Park Jin-woo made a call in the dark. His voice was as cold and sinister as a snake. Her voice was still trembling, but there was a new, firm resolve in it. Proof of her decision not to run away anymore, to face this unrealistic proposal head-on. There's someone I need you to take care of. Quietly. And permanently. A satisfied smile finally appeared on Taejun's lips. He took a business card from his pocket and handed it to Ha-eun. A low reply came from the other end of the line. Park Jin-woo hung up with a satisfied smile. He didn't know it, but the words he had just spoken were the final shovelful of dirt on his own grave. And that entire conversation was being broadcast live through the speaker on Kang Tae-jun's desk. Come here by 10 a.m. tomorrow. Secretary Kim will guide you. Tae-jun pressed the record button and muttered coldly. He turned and left without another word. The sound of his shoes echoed down the dark alley. Left alone. Ha-eun looked down at the business card in her hand. Kang Tae-jun, CEO, Yoon-sung Group. The name, embossed in gold foil, shone eerily under the cold moonlight. Finally, he took the bait. Had she just made a deal with the devil? Or had she grabbed the only lifeline that could save her from the swamp of despair? She didn't know the answer. The only thing that was certain was that her life, from this night on, would never be the same again. His eyes glinted like a predator's. The long, cruel play was over, and now it was time for the hunt for bloody revenge to begin. The next day at 10 a.m., Ha-eun stood in front of the address written on the business card Kang Tae-jun had given her. Before her stood the towering Yoon-sung Group headquarters, its grandeur on full display. The glass-paneled exterior gleamed dazzlingly in the morning sun, and the people coming and going in front of it were all stylish and confident. Ha-eun looked down at her worn-out flats and faded coat, instinctively pulling her collar tighter. Despite her resolve from the previous night, she felt herself shrinking once again. Finally, Lee Ha-eun's patience ran out. Kang Tae-jun's coldness grew worse by the day, and the world's ridicule of her never ceased. Her heart was tattered beyond repair. She made a decision. To end this hellish play, she hadn't slept a wink all night. Kang Tae-jun's proposal kept replaying in her mind. Should she sell her pride to pay off her family's debt and reclaim her dream? Or should she continue on the poor but honorable path? But the word honorable was already a luxury. Thinking of her parents suffering from the harassment of debt collectors, she had no choice. That night, Ha-eun took out her old travel bag. She changed into the same clothes she had worn when she first came to this house. She didn't touch any of the glamorous clothes or jewelry Tae-jun had bought her. They weren't truly hers. Lastly, she placed the final landscape design for Green City, which she had worked on all night, on the living room table. This was her last sincerity, her farewell gift to him. As she entered the lobby, the chill of the cold marble floor seeped up from her toes. When she gave Kang Tae-jun's name at the reception desk, the employee looked her over with surprised eyes for a moment before politely making a call. A moment later, the neatly suited Secretary Kim came down and escorted her to the CEO's office on the top floor. The sky, as if knowing her heart, was filled with dark clouds. It looked like it would pour at any moment. Ha-eun quietly opened the penthouse door and left. No one in the house noticed her departure. Kang Tae-jun's office seemed to be a direct reflection of his personality, devoid of any unnecessary decoration. The space, furnished in black and gray tones, was extremely minimalist and cold. Beyond the massive glass window, the Seoul skyline unfolded like a panorama. It felt like the space of an emperor who had the entire city at his feet. But her every move was within Kang Tae-jun's grasp. The moment he learned from Secretary Kim's real-time report that she had left the house, Tae-jun shot up from his seat. Tae-jun was sitting at a huge desk, reviewing documents. He didn't even look up when Ha-eun entered, as if she didn't exist. After Secretary Kim quietly left and they were alone in the office, a suffocating silence fell. Ha-eun stood by the door, not knowing what to do. Proceed as planned. There can be no margin for error. After a long while, Tae-jun finally looked up from his papers and at her. His voice was as cold as ice, but his eyes burned like a hot flame. The time had finally come. You're here. Ha-eun walked aimlessly. She had no plan, no idea where to go or what to do. All she wanted was to escape from this whole situation. It was then, as she entered a deserted, dilapidated alley in a redevelopment area, that a black van suddenly blocked her path. The van door opened, and two burly men got out. Yes, you're Miss Lee Ha-eun, right? You'll have to come with us for a moment. The contract is being reviewed by the lawyer. He'll bring it soon. Before that, what are you planning to tell your parents? Their eyes were menacing. Ha-un stepped back. It was an unexpected question. Ha-un hadn't thought that far ahead. Who are you? Go away. I'll handle it. But the men laughed at her resistance and easily grabbed her arms. Just as Ha-un was about to scream, a figure slowly emerged from the darkness behind them. It was Park Jin-woo. His face was filled with the vile smile of a victor. And handle it if you suddenly announce you're marrying the CEO of Yunsung Group. They'll think you're being sold off for the dead. Your pride wouldn't allow that, would it? Long time no see, Ms. Lee Ha-un. Or should I say, the abandoned Mrs. Kang Ha-un now. He saw right through her. Ha-un bit her lip. Park Jin-woo, I'll create a scenario for you. Taejun leaned back in his chair. We met by chance, and I fell for you at first sight, for your talent and innocence. So I pursued you relentlessly. And upon learning of your family's difficulties, I offered to help. It's only natural to help the family of the woman I love. This should protect both your parents and your pride. I heard you dared to dig into my past. Very brave of you. But that bravery ends today. There's no one in this world to protect you. Now that even Kang Taejun has abandoned you, it was a perfect lie. Ha-un was dumbfounded but couldn't argue. He had calculated everything. He gestured with his chin to his men. The men tried to drag her into an abandoned building. Ha-un struggled desperately, but it was no use. Fear engulfed her entire body. Soon, the lawyer and Secretary Kim entered with a thick contract file. The lawyer explained the main clauses one by one. A contract period of 1 year, during which they would fulfill all legal duties as a married couple, respect each other's privacy, and never disclose the contract's contents. And the most important clause, Party A, Kang Taejun, would, upon signing the contract, pay off all debts incurred by Party B's Lee Ha-yoon's family, and pay the agreed-upon alimony upon the contract's expiration. It was at that very moment, Ha-yoon read the contract carefully. Everything was converted into money. Her 1 year was priced at an exact amount. She hesitated for a moment, pen in hand. At the tip of this pen, her entire life would change. Screech. As if reading her hesitation, Taejun spoke softly. With the loud sound of screeching tires, dozens of headlights simultaneously lit up the dark alley as if it were daytime. In an instant, dozens of men in black suits and police officers surrounded the abandoned building. Park Jin-woo and his men froze, stunned by the sudden turn of events. It's not too late. If you walk out of here, we go back to being strangers who met today for the first time. And in the center of it all, a man got out of a car, backlit by the brightest headlights. It was Kang Taejun. His face was like that of a beast that had lost its reason to rage. Ha-eun closed her eyes, and she signed. Lee Ha-eun. The 3 characters remained, a clear proof of the sale of her soul. Take your filthy hands off my person. Now, that afternoon, everything proceeded swiftly. The marriage registration was done through a proxy, and the Yunsung Group's legal team visited Ha-yoon's home to settle all the debt documents. By evening, Ha-yoon arrived at Kang Taejun's penthouse with only her old travel bag. His voice echoed, low and chilling like a demon from hell. It was more like a grand castle than a home. With the night view of Seoul spread out below, Ha-eun was overwhelmed from the moment she stepped into the entrance. High ceilings, a vast living room, top-of-the-line furniture. Everything was on a different level from the world she had lived in. Park Jin-woo's face turned ashen. Kang, Tae-jun, how did you— Your room is at the end of the hall on the right on the 2nd floor. A housekeeper will take care of the chores, and meals will be prepared. If you need anything, contact Secretary Kim. I was waiting for you to take the bait. Tae-jun spoke indifferently, as if a hotel employee were guiding a guest. To him, this place seemed to be just a space to sleep, not a home. At Tae-jun's signal, his bodyguard subdued Park Jin-woo's men in the blink of an eye. The police handcuffed them. Realizing it was all over, Park Jin-woo collapsed to the ground. And so their awkward cohabitation began. They lived under the same roof but were complete strangers. The only point of contact was meeting at breakfast. There was almost no conversation. Taejun read the newspaper while eating, and Ha-yoon swallowed her food so nervously she couldn't tell if it was going into her mouth or her nose. Taejun didn't spare him a glance and ran straight to Ha-eun. She was still trembling in fear, collapsed on the ground. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her small shoulders. A few days passed. Ha-eun wandered around the huge house like a ghost. She was warned not to enter Taejun's study. She was told she could use the other spaces freely, but none of them made her feel comfortable. Her only sanctuary was the room assigned to her. It's okay. It's okay now, Ha-eun. One night, unable to sleep, Ha-eun went out to the living room. Taejun didn't seem to be home from work yet. On the living room table lay a rolled-up blueprint that he seemed to have forgotten. Professional curiosity sparked. She cautiously approached and unrolled the blueprint. He called her name tenderly for the first time. At that moment, the rain that the sky had been holding back began to fall, first in drops, then turning into a downpour. Yunsung Green City Project Landscape Design Final Plan. Holding her in his arms, Taejun began to confess everything. It was a massive new city project that the Yunsung Group was staking its future on. Ha-eun's heart began to pound. This was the kind of project every landscape architect dreamed of. She held her breath and examined the blueprint. As it was done by the country's top design firm, the overall composition was excellent. But her eyes began to see fatal flaws. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. There's a problem with the drainage system design. This area has frequent heavy rains in the summer, and with this slope and catchment area, flooding is unavoidable. And the planting plan. This tree is not suitable for this soil and climate. It will wither and die within a few years. His voice trembled, mixed with the sound of the rain. She muttered to herself without realizing it. Then, as if possessed, she found a pencil and began to quickly sketch on a blank piece of paper how she would design it. Reading the flow of plants and soil, water and wind was her instinct. The ideas in her head came to life at her fingertips. She drew an innovative alternative that compensated for the existing design's problems and combined aesthetic beauty with practical function. I had no choice if I wanted to protect you. From the moment I knew Park Jin-woo was after you, I had to make him believe you were abandoned by me to finish him off completely. So I deliberately acted cold, humiliated you. Every night, hearing you cry, my heart felt like it was being torn to shreds. How much time had passed? The sound of the front door opening startled Ha-eun, and she looked up. A tired-looking Taejun stood there. His gaze fell on the blueprint spread on the table and Ha-eun's sketch next to it. Ha-eun looked up at him with disbelieving eyes. His face hardened. So, it was all an act. Who told you could touch my documents? Yes! Taejun cupped her wet cheeks. Something hot was streaming from his eyes as well. It was impossible to tell if it was rain or tears. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not that. It was just on the table. The contract was never important from the beginning. The moment I first saw you at Lucille, the moment I saw your eyes that wouldn't break even in the face of that humiliation, I had already fallen for you. The contract was just an excuse to keep you by my side. I love you, Lee Ha-eun. From the beginning until now, there has never been a moment I didn't love you. Ha-eun hurriedly tried to hide her sketch, but Taejun was faster. He strode over and snatched the sketch from her hand. His eyes quickly scanned the paper. At his explosive confession, Ha-eun's world stopped. All the misunderstandings and pain melted away like snow, and only his sincerity washed over her like a huge wave. She could no longer hold back and burst into tears in his arms. They were not tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of relief, of overwhelming happiness. His gaze, initially filled with dismissal and contempt, gradually changed to surprise. He was an expert in architecture and design. He could tell at a glance that Ha-eun's sketch was not just an amateur's doodle. Her sketch accurately pointed out the core problems of the existing plan and presented a clear and original solution. In particular, the idea of an eco-friendly circulation system using rainwater was something he hadn't even considered. You too. Taejun looked up from the sketch and at Ha-eun, the clumsy woman who was always trembling with anxiety, who only spilled water. That was all he knew of Lee Ha-eun. But now, before him was the image of a professional with sharp insight and brilliant talent. Her voice was choked with sobs and she couldn't finish her sentence. But Taejun understood everything. Did you draw this? He gently kissed her lips. The rain fell harder, but the two of them heard nothing. It was as if only the sound of their heartbeats and their hot breath existed in the world. The long, long night of misunderstanding was over, and the dawn of true love was finally breaking. The contract was soaked and lost its form in the rain, but in their hearts, an indelible covenant of love was being engraved. His voice, unbeknownst to him, was tinged with a faint awe. Ha-in nodded. The morning after the storm, the world was turned upside down. Taejun was silent for a while. He looked back and forth between Ha-eun's sketch and the original blueprint. Complex calculations were running through his mind. He was a businessman. His eye for people, for talent, was more accurate than anyone's. The dramatic events of the night before made the morning news headlines. Jinmyung Construction's executive director, Park Jin-woo, arrested on site for kidnapping. Conspiracy. Okars. Yunsun Group submits evidence of Jinmyung Construction's massive shoddy construction and slush funds to prosecutors. All media outlets reported this shocking news as their top story. For the first time, he thought that his initial assessment of her as an interesting pebble might have been a mistake. Perhaps what he had picked up was a rare, uncut gem, its value hidden under a layer of dust. All the evidence that Kang Tae-jun had been secretly preparing for the past few weeks was revealed to the world. The evidence of shoddy construction that Ha-eun had risked her life to find. The video of the retired site manager's confession, Jinmyung Construction's slush fund ledgers, and crucially, the phone recording of Park Jin-woo ordering the disposal of Ha-eun. The evidence was so clear and shocking that there was no room for anyone to escape. A very faint but definite smile of interest appeared on his lips. This contract marriage, he thought, might turn out to be more interesting than he expected. South Korea was horrified by the massive corruption scandal. Public anger boiled over against Jinmyung Construction for filling their own pockets at the expense of citizen safety. Jinmyung Construction's stock price plummeted as soon as the market opened, and protests by citizens and investors claiming damages were endless in front of the company. Park Jin-woo's father, Chairman Park, tried to manage the situation somehow, but the dam had already burst. The empire of corruption he had built over decades was crumbling like a sandcastle overnight. After that night's incident, the atmosphere in the penthouse subtly changed. Kang Tae-jun was still quiet and cold, but his gaze towards Ha-eun now held something different. It was no longer the look one gives a mere contract partner. It was like an appraiser examining an unknown gem, a mix of curiosity and analysis. At the breakfast table, he spent more time looking at Ha-eun's face than the newspaper, and he would occasionally ask nonchalant questions about the sketches she drew. In the midst of the chaos, the Yunsun Group was facing a new chapter. Ha-eun was also confused. She still found him uncomfortable and intimidating, but he was also the only person who had recognized her talent at a glance. That fact created small ripples in her heart. Kang Tae-jun held an emergency press conference. Amidst the flashing of countless cameras, he stood at the podium, maintaining his usual composure. Then, one Friday evening, Tae-jun came home from work and dropped a bombshell. The Yunsun Group will no longer compromise with corrupt companies that threaten the safety of the public. The data we have released today is just the beginning. We will actively cooperate with the prosecution's investigation and take the lead in breaking the cycle of corruption that is rampant in the construction industry. You need to come with me to a charity party tomorrow evening. His declaration was firm, and he went on to announce the future of the Green City project. What a party! Furthermore, taking this incident as an opportunity, our Yunsun Group intends to completely revise the Green City project and present a new milestone in the history of construction in South Korea. We will go beyond simple new city development and create a model for a sustainable future city where nature and humans coexist. At the center of that innovative vision is the head of the landscape architecture division for this project, advisor Lee Ha-eun. Ha-eun's eyes widened. The word party did not exist in her life. At Tae-jun's gesture, the side door of the press conference hall opened and Ha-eun appeared. Dressed in a neat white suit that Tae-jun had prepared for her, she was no longer the anxious woman of the past. Her eyes, though tense, shone with intelligence, and her steps were filled with the confidence of a professional. It's an annual event hosted by the Yunsun Group. It's an important gathering where all the key figures from the political and business worlds will be present. It will be your first public appearance as my wife. She stood next to Tae-jun. As if the storm of last night was a lie, the two looked like a perfect pair of partners. But I don't belong in a place like that. I don't have anything to wear. Good morning. I am Lee Ha-eun. You don't need to worry about that. Tae-jun cut her off. People will come tomorrow afternoon. They will make you into the mistress of the Yunsun Group, so you just have to stay still. She composed her trembling voice and began her presentation, which she had prepared herself. She explained complex design concepts in a language that everyone could easily understand. a circulation system that purifies rainwater and uses it for streams within the complex, a plan to create an ecological park centered on native plants, and even vertical gardens utilizing the rooftops and walls of buildings. Her presentation was more than just a design explanation. It contained a deep philosophy and warm sensibility about the future city. His words were a command, and refusal was not an option. The gazes of the reporters, who had initially viewed her through the colored glasses of being the CEO's wife, gradually began to change. They were witnessing the birth of a genius architect right before their eyes. Questions poured in. She answered every question without hesitation and with all her heart. The next afternoon, the penthouse was bustling with professionals Ha-eun had never seen before in her life. A stylist, a hair designer, a makeup artist. They examined Ha-eun from head to toe like explorers discovering a new land, engaging in heated discussions. Ha-eun had to sit like a mannequin, led by their hands. The faces of the project team members watching her were also filled with awe. They realized that the woman they had dismissed as a parachute was, in fact, the only hero who could save this massive project from crisis. A few hours later, standing in front of the mirror, Ha-eun couldn't believe her own reflection. Her plainly tied hair now flowed over her shoulders in elegant waves, and light makeup delicately highlighted her features. And the dress she was wearing, a deep navy silk dress, personally chosen by Taejun, beautifully revealed her fair skin and slender shoulders. A simple but brilliantly sparkling diamond necklace adorned her neck. The press conference was a huge success. The next day's front pages were covered with Ha-eun's photo and the blueprint for Green City that she had presented, coupled with the Jin-myung construction corruption scandal. The image of the Unsung Group and Ha-eun soared to new heights. The crisis had been perfectly turned into an opportunity. The simple pebble was gone. In the mirror stood an unfamiliar but elegant and graceful woman. A few months later, the court's verdict was delivered. Park Jin-woo was sentenced to a heavy prison term of over 10 years, convicted on numerous charges including kidnapping conspiracy, breach of trust, and embezzlement. His father, Chairman Park, also could not avoid arrest. Jin-myung Construction, which had once dominated the construction industry, eventually went bankrupt and disappeared into the annals of history. The end of arrogance and greed was a miserable downfall. Just then, the door opened and Taejun walked in. He was already in a perfect tuxedo. The moment he saw Ha-eun, his eyes wavered slightly. For the first time, the emotion of astonishment was clearly visible on his usually expressionless face. He stood speechless for a moment, just looking at her. It was as if he was witnessing the moment a gem, hidden in dust, finally revealed its true brilliance. On a clear autumn afternoon, when everything was finding its place, not bad, Ha-eun and Taejun stood on a hill overlooking the construction site of Green City. Even amidst the noise and dust, the sight of the new city's skeleton being erected day by day was marvelous. The outline of the huge central park designed by Ha-eun was also gradually emerging. That was all he said, but Ha-eun couldn't help but blush. "I can't believe it," Ha-eun said softly. "Just a few months ago, I couldn't have imagined I'd be standing here." The hotel ballroom where the party was held was a true gathering of wealth and power. A giant chandelier seemed to sprinkle gold dust, and the clinking of champagne glasses and the sound of laughter mixed with the classical music, creating a buzz. Ha-eun entered the ballroom, practically clinging to Taejun's arm. Everything felt surreal. Taejun silently took her hand. His hand was as warm and firm as ever. Their appearance immediately drew everyone's attention. It was the moment the veiled wife of Unsung Group's Kang Taejun was revealed for the first time. Countless gazes fell upon Ha-eun. Curiosity, jealousy, and sharp, probing stares. Ha-eun felt a cold sweat run down her back. "You did it? Your talent, your courage changed everything." Just then, Taejun's hand wrapped firmly around her waist. "No, if it weren't for you, I would have been nothing. Straighten your back, lift your head. From now on, you are not Lee Ha-eun, but my wife, Kang Ha-eun. Think of it not as them looking at you, but as you looking down on them." Ha-eun looked up at him. His eyes were filled with deep love and trust, a gaze where there was no longer a need for contracts or plays, only sincerity. His voice was low and calm, but it gave her a strange sense of stability. Ha-eun took a deep breath and did as he said, straightening her back and lifting her head. Taejun led her around, introducing her to the giants of the business world. He was the perfect escort. He led the conversation so naturally that Ha-eun had no time to feel awkward, controlling every situation so that all she had to do was smile. It's all over now. As they were greeting people, a disgustingly familiar voice came from behind. No, Taejun said, squeezing her hand tighter. This is just the beginning. For us. Well, if it isn't CEO Kang Taejun, and the lady next to you is, huh. As he said, the nightmarish past was all settled. Justice was served, and evil was punished. Now, before them lay a new world to build together, and a brilliant future to fill with their love for each other. The refreshing wind blowing on the hill seemed to bless the new beginning of the two. Ha-eun's heart sank. It was Park Jin-woo. He was standing there in a flashy suit with an actress in a revealing dress on his arm, a sleazy smile on his face. His eyes, upon seeing Ha-eun, were filled with shock and displeasure. The shock of seeing the pebble he had discarded now appearing as a dazzling jewel in his rival's hand. A year passed, the seasons had come full circle, and autumn had returned. In that time, much in the world had changed. Isn't this Ms. Lee Ha-eun? It's a small world. To see you in a place like this. Today, Yunsun Green City finally revealed its complete form to the world. It was a grand completion ceremony attended by key figures from all walks of life, including the president of South Korea. At the center of the event was, without a doubt, Lee Ha-eun. His tone was subtly sarcastic. The eyes of the people around them turned to them. She was no longer the clumsy, timid woman she once was. Standing on the stage in a calm navy blue dress, she shone confidently as the new icon of the Korean architectural world. Her name was now preceded by glamorous titles such as Genius Landscape Architect and Pioneer who designed the city of the future. Even within the Yunsun Group, she had become the head of an independent department overseeing the landscape design division. What brings you here? Don't tell me. You came as CEO Kang's partner. Wow, you've really made it. I must have misjudged you. I wonder if you're the same clumsy woman who was spilling water at that restaurant. Yunsun Green City is not simply a city of buildings and roads. She began her speech in a calm, powerful voice in front of countless cameras and a large audience. He deliberately spoke loudly, trying to humiliate Ha-eun. Ha-eun's face went white. It felt like the nightmare of that day was coming back to life. This is a space where nature learns to live with humans, and humans learn to live with nature, respecting each other. We designed this city cherishing the value of a single drop of rain, a single blade of grass, a single tree. I sincerely hope that many people will build a happy home here. But before she could speak, Taejun stepped forward. His movement was quiet, but the coldness he emitted seemed to drop the surrounding temperature by several degrees. Thunderous applause erupted as her speech ended. Ha-eun smiled brightly at the audience and bowed her head. In the front row of the audience, Kang Taejun watched her, a smile of pure happiness on his face. His eyes were filled only with pride and deep love. People whispered, amazed that the Ice Prince CEO of the Yunsun Group could look at a woman with such warm eyes. Do you have something to say to my wife? Executive Director Park Jin-woo. After the ceremony, the two escaped the noisy crowd and headed to their favorite place, the Central Park. Garden of Breath, located in the heart of the city. It was the space where the very ideas Ha-eun had first sketched had become a reality. It didn't feel artificial at all. It was a natural landscape, as if it had been there for a long time. A clear stream flowed. Wildflowers of different colors bloomed throughout the seasons. And an eco-friendly playground was filled with the laughter of children. Taejun's voice was as cold as ice. He emphasized the word wife. Park Jin-woo's face momentarily stiffened. The two sat side by side on a bench by the lake. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky and the lake in a brilliant red. Whoa, wife, don't tell me. You got married to this woman. Remember, Taejun spoke first. The day we first met, you spilled water, and I made you an absurd proposal. Your judgment of people is so poor. It's no wonder Jinmyung Construction's projects fail time and again. A faint sneer appeared on Taejun's lips. The pebble you threw away turned out to be a one-of-a-kind diamond to me. Ha-eun burst out laughing. Of course, how could I forget I thought you were a really obnoxious devil back then? He pulled Ha-eun tighter by the waist and continued. Do you still think so? And let me give you a piece of advice. Don't you ever dare to touch my diamond again. If it gets even a single scratch, you won't be able to handle the consequences, even if you bet everything you have. Ha-en looked at him playfully. Sometimes, when you're making me work, you still seem like a devil. His words were a threat, but they sounded like a warning from an absolute ruler that no one could defy. A brief silence fell over the ballroom. Park Jin-woo's face turned red and purple, and he couldn't say a word. He was completely defeated in front of Taejun's cold gaze. Taejun wrapped his arm around her shoulder and said softly, "If it weren't for that devil, I would never have met an angel like you." Taejun didn't spare him another glance and led Ha-eun away. They sat in silence for a while, leaning against each other, watching the beautiful sunset. The events of the past year flashed before their eyes like a panorama. Misunderstandings and pain, threats and tears. But because of all those moments of suffering, the happiness they felt now seemed even more precious and valuable. "Are you okay?" "Ha-eun," Taejun asked as they stepped out onto the terrace. Ha-eun then realized she had been holding her breath. She looked up at Taejun. His dark eyes looked especially deep in the cold night air. Taejun called her name. His voice was more serious than ever before. He released his arm from her shoulder and slowly got down on one knee in front of her. Just now, he had called her his diamond. Even though she knew it was a calculated remark aimed at Park Jin-woo, Ha-eun's heart couldn't help but flutter. It was the first time. The first time someone had stood up for her, protected her so perfectly. Ha-eun's eyes widened in surprise. Thank you." Taejun took a small velvet box out of his pocket and opened it. Inside was a small but brilliantly sparkling ring, incomparable to the diamond necklace that had been a symbol of their contract. It was designed in the shape of a forget-me-not, Ha-eun's favorite flower. A flower whose meaning is, "Do not forget me." "There's nothing to thank me for. I was just protecting the unsung group's reputation. Our beginning was a contract, and it was fake. But my heart was never fake for a single moment. That contract was torn up in my heart a long time ago." He still spoke indifferently, but Ha-eun could feel the subtle gap between his words and his actions. He looked deep into her eyes and continued. Taejun himself couldn't understand his own feelings. The moment Park Jin-woo looked at Ha-eun with contempt, he felt the blood rush to his head. It wasn't just anger for a contract partner or the company's image. It was a primal, instinctive anger one feels when something of theirs is insulted. Possessiveness. He tried to ignore the name of this emotion. Feeling such a thing for this woman was a breach of contract. "Lee Ha-eun, will you marry me again? This time, with no contract, no conditions, only love. Let me live the rest of my life as your husband." In the cold night air, the two stood in silence for a while, but the icy wall that had flowed between them had clearly cracked tonight. Through the gap in their contract-based relationship, an unexpected spark of a strange emotion was beginning to ignite. Hot tears streamed down Ha-eun's face. She nodded her head vigorously. Yes, I will." For several days after the charity party, the business world was abuzz with the news of Kang Tae-jun's marriage. The fact that his veiled wife was an unknown landscape architect from an ordinary family further piqued people's curiosity. However, because of Tae-jun's firm protection and affectionate remarks about his wife at the party, no one dared to look down on Ha-eun. Tae-jun smiled brightly and slipped the ring onto her fourth finger. The ring fit perfectly, as if it had always been hers. He stood up, took her in his arms, and kissed her passionately. The beautiful sunset in the park blessed their new covenant. But there was one exception, Park Jin-woo. A month later, the two really did get married again. The humiliation of that night left an indelible scar on Park Jin-woo's pride. He drank expensive whiskey straight from the bottle in his office, trying to quell his anger, Kang Tae-jun's contemptuous gaze, the whispers of the people around them, and above all, the sight of Lee Ha-eun, whom he had discarded like trash, shining like a jewel. All of it turned his stomach. It wasn't a glamorous hotel wedding that drew the attention of the public. They held a small, simple wedding in the glass greenhouse of a small botanical garden that Ha-eun had personally tended to, with only their parents and a few very close friends invited. How dare he do this to me, Park Jin-woo! Instead of a pure white wedding dress, Ha-eun wore a simple ivory dress that perfectly matched her image. In her hand, instead of a fancy bouquet, was a bunch of wildflowers she had picked from the garden that morning. Taejun also wore a comfortable linen suit instead of a heavy tuxedo. He threw the glass against the wall, shattering it. They faced each other and exchanged vows of love with unadorned sincerity. Kang Tae-jun and that bitch Lee Ha-eun, I won't let you get away with this. No matter what trials come, I will be by your side, your most steadfast support. I will spend all my seasons with you and be your warmest garden. His eyes were filled with venom. Burning with a desire for revenge, he began to look for a way to inflict the greatest damage on Kang Tae-jun. And the answer was clear: the Green City Project, on which the future of the Yunsung Group depended. If he could bring down that project, he could deal a fatal blow to both Kang Tae-jun's reputation and Yunsung Group's stock price. Moreover, since he had received a hint that the project was related to Lee Ha-eun's talent, it was a revenge that killed two birds with one stone. At their vows, the guests teared up and gave them a warm round of applause. It was a perfect and genuine moment. A few days later, strange rumors began to circulate around the Green City project. Malicious rumors that the project site's ground was weak and unsuitable for large-scale construction spread through stock market newsletters. Environmental groups suddenly began to protest that the project was destroying the ecosystem, and the district office delayed permits over trivial matters. Some of the suppliers who were supposed to provide materials suddenly canceled their contracts. Time passed again, and the first winter after the wedding arrived. It wasn't difficult for Kang Tae-jun to figure out that Park Jin-woo was behind all of this. The living room of the penthouse was filled with a warm glow. The fire crackled in the fireplace, and outside the window, white snow was falling heavily. The meeting room at Yunsung Group was icy cold. The project managers gathered for a strategy meeting, but no clear solution emerged. Ha-eun was comfortably leaning back on the sofa, drawing something in her sketchbook. It was no longer the blueprint of a huge city. She was now designing a small playground for a small orphanage in the countryside. The rumors about the ground stability are continuing to spread. We're being inundated with inquiries from shareholders. The environmental group's protests have even been reported in the media. It's a big blow to the group's image. The construction schedule is being delayed overall due to the permit delays. If this continues, huge losses are inevitable. Just then, Tae-jun quietly approached and hugged her from behind. His chin rested naturally on her shoulder. As the executive's reports continued, Tae-jun's expression hardened. He stared out the window silently. There was only one thought in his mind. How can I turn this crisis into an opportunity? Are you already designing our baby's playground? His gaze fell on a file on his desk. It was the sketch Ha-eun had drawn that night, and a report he had instructed Secretary Kim to prepare based on her ideas. Eco-friendly circulation system using rainwater. Planting plan considering the local ecosystem. Her ideas went beyond just beautiful landscaping. They held the key to enhancing the project's intrinsic value and breaking through the current crisis. It was a card that could turn the stigma of environmental destruction into a reputation as the most eco-friendly city. His voice was full of playfulness and happiness. Ha-eun smiled shyly and wrapped her arms around her slightly swollen belly. A new life, the fruit of their love, was growing inside her. At that moment, Tae-jun made up his mind. It was a gamble, but he trusted his instincts. I know, this is just a talent donation. The next day, an emergency board meeting was convened. The air was heavy in the room where all the key executives of the Yunsung Group had gathered. Tae-jun presided over the meeting with his usual expressionless face. After the report on the project's difficulties was over, one of the directors cautiously spoke up. You have a beautiful heart, too. Mr. CEO, this project is too risky. Perhaps we should reconsider it entirely. Tae-jun placed his hand over hers on her belly and whispered to the baby inside. There will be no reconsideration. Why, baby, can you hear Daddy's voice? You are blessed to have the most wonderful mother in the world. Tae-jun cut him off firmly. Ha-eun closed her eyes at his warm touch and voice. Everything felt like a dream, a disastrous blind date, a fateful meeting disguised as a coincidence, and the two of them who had overcome numerous adversities to finally become a real family. On the contrary, we will use this crisis to take the Green City project to the next level. The snow outside was covering the world in white, but in their hearts, the warm spring sunshine was shining brighter than ever. The mistake of a clumsy and awkward woman had melted a man's frozen world. And finally, the flower of eternal love had bloomed. And that love, now with a new life, would continue to cultivate a beautiful garden in the future. All eyes turned to him. We plan to introduce a completely new concept of landscape design that goes beyond the existing plan. We will shed the stigma of environmental destruction and seize the title of South Korea's best eco-friendly city. A new design. It would take too much time and money to change the design now. His tone was still cold, devoid of any consideration. But strangely, it was different from Park Jin-woo's contemptuous tone. He was simply stating a fact. After a moment's hesitation, Ha-eun cautiously took the handkerchief. A soft texture and a faint scent brushed against her nose. I have the right person to solve that problem.